What if I told you Ukraine managed to tear apart one of the costliest Russian strikes of the entire war, with drones so cheap they could be built in less than a day? From $120 million in precision missiles, raining down to 3D printed frames, costing only hundreds, this battle flipped the math of modern warfare. But how did those low-cost swarms and hidden interceptors completely change the outcome? Stick here, because the answer reveals more about the future of war than any headline could. Before we move on, I will like you to subscribe to the channel and like the video. How does any military force withstand 53 drones and 3 ballistic missiles aimed at a single location? The math should be impossible. A storm of guided machines approaching from multiple directions, coordinated to strike in seconds, was designed to wipe out everything in its path. This was not a scattered bombardment or random shelling. It was a package of precision meant to collapse an entire base, erase personnel, and send a message of technological superiority. The attack had been calculated with the expectation of no survivors. From the stratosphere, ballistic missiles fell at hypersonic speed, appearing for only a moment on radar, before streaking downward like bolts of fire. At low altitude, drones advanced in waves, programmed to coordinate from different angles, overwhelming any simple defense with sheer saturation. They did not arrive all at once, but in overlapping groups, forcing defenders to face one vector and then immediately pivot toward another. To the outside observer, this appeared unanswerable. No base of modest size could stop such complexity from the world's largest military machine. Sitting in that crosshair was the base at Samir. The site looked ordinary. Support structures, fuel depots, barracks, and scattered vehicles. Its value lay in logistics, not in heavy armor or major weapons storage. To satellite imagery, Samir seemed a soft target, a place where even a fraction of the $120 million barrage would easily reduce operations to rubble. For Russia, striking here meant sending a statement not just to Ukraine, but to every ally watching. Survival against overwhelming firepower was futile. Even analysts, reviewing footage before the strike, suggested the defenders had slim odds of escape. Concealed radar arrays had been installed, designed to stay dormant until activated. Buried wires and camouflaged antennae masked their positions from satellite surveillance. At the precise second the drones entered effective range, those arrays switched on, tracking coordinates with surprising accuracy. On the other end of those signals were interceptors, small, fast, and designed for moments exactly like this. What seemed like a helpless target had in fact been layered with responses Russia had not anticipated. As the drones entered formation, bayonet-class interceptors launched. Unlike large air defense missiles, these were compact drones, hardened with minimal armor and equipped with rapid-firing cannons. Within seconds, bursts tore through the lead wave. Wings shattered. Engines burst into flame. Several drones collided mid-air, multiplying the damage. Above them, Patriot batteries locked onto the incoming Iskander-class missiles. Long before they reached the descent phase, interceptors rose high, meeting them in controlled detonations miles above ground. Not one missile closed in far enough to threaten the structures at Samir. Observers might have expected the ground to quake or buildings to collapse. Instead, the base stood untouched. Smoke spiraled in the distance, but it was the smoke of destroyed weapons before they reached their mark. Against traditional expectations, not a single drone or missile made direct contact. From what looked like certain collapse, Ukraine announced something entirely different. A general later remarked that this moment no longer counted as defense. It was the start of actively turning Russian attacks against themselves. A shift had occurred, not in damaged concrete, but in psychology. The defenders went from reacting in desperation to demonstrating deterrence. If an assault costing $120 million could be erased in minutes, what came next had the potential to redefine every principle of battle. What if the smallest units on the battlefield could do more damage than the most expensive weapon systems? That is exactly the turn Ukraine made after surviving a strike that was supposed to crush it. Instead of matching high-end missiles with more high-end missiles, commanders pivoted to a different toolkit altogether. The next move wasn't about overwhelming firepower, It was about speed, unpredictability, and attacks so sharp that they cut through Russian formations without leaving a trace of where they came from. The first example came only days after the failed bombardment. A fuel convoy near Novovalinsk rolled out before sunrise, 15 trucks and several lightly armored vehicles supporting them. Drivers thought they were in safe territory, far from Ukrainian artillery or drones. What they didn't expect was a scattered team of guerrilla fighters lying in the brush. These weren't carrying heavy launchers or vehicle support. Each man had a rifle and a pack with shaped charges designed to ignite fuel tanks. When the last truck rounded a bend, gunfire erupted from both sides of the road. The lead vehicle swerved, another jackknifed, and within minutes, half the column was burning. The air lit up orange against the morning sky. Organized resistance from the convoy never materialized because the ambushers vanished back into tree lines as quickly as they appeared. It wasn't about holding ground. It was about creating fear with precision hits that cost little but delivered heavy losses. The most striking effect came when a Ukrainian unit sabotaged a communications hub. Lightly defended and thought of as safe from direct strike, it was crippled for hours after a small team carried handheld transmitters inside and detonated charges that tore through power lines and nodes. For the duration, Russian officers in the sector could only reach units within line of sight. Orders that normally flowed smoothly broke down into confusion. Rumors raced faster than official commands. Some formations pulled back without instructions, afraid of strikes that weren't even underway. Fear turned into paralysis. After just 1 week of raids like this, Ukraine introduced something new, and it shocked those watching even more than the first ambushes. This time, it wasn't a handful of men with explosives, but swarms of cheap, plastic-bodied suicide drones. Frames were 3D printed in underground facilities. Circuits were soldered together on workbenches. The build time was less than a day from parts to flight. By the end of the week, more than 300 were airborne, guided into Russian positions by slower reconnaissance drones circling above. The drones didn't strike in neat waves like expensive systems, but in clusters, 50 or 60 at a time, overwhelming defenses that could shoot down some, but never enough. Russian units tried to answer with jamming. 5 drones lost signals and spun out erratically near the front. It could have been a setback, even a disaster. Instead, Ukrainian operators caught a signal bounce, redirected the failed units manually, and steered them into an ammunition depot. The fireball climbed high enough to be seen 20 kilometers away. What was meant to nullify the swarm only multiplied its effect. Improvised transmitters that hopped across frequencies, frames made of molded plastic, and guidance patched mid-attack. That was the blueprint. Ukraine showed that setbacks weren't failures. They were opportunities to pivot, readjust, and strike even harder. If a $120 million barrage couldn't break them, and if 500 drones could burn entire depots, then the real question is how far this asymmetric warfare could expand. Because from this point forward, Ukraine was not just defending, it was preparing a full assault. Ukraine didn't just survive a massive strike, it turned that moment into a shift in modern battle. What looked like a desperate defense became the start of a new playbook, where adaptation and creativity replaced sheer firepower. The change from prey to predator was unmistakable, and it carried a message that size and cost no longer guaranteed dominance. So here's the real question. If a $500 drone can undo billion-dollar strategies, have prestige weapons already lost their edge? And if war can be rewritten like this, which conflict will be next to echo the transformation we've just witnessed?